there was a race for the Tory leadership, which ended with Liz Truss being elected as the leader of the party. And now, within 45 days of taking office, she has stepped down. And let me go back to Radhika here. Radhika, if there's going to be a leadership election, and as Liz Truss is saying, it will be completed in the next week, does that mean that Rishi Sunak then is not automatically chosen because he ended up second in that race that happened not too long ago?
Well, logic would say that, but things work differently with the 1922 committee of the Conservative Party. In fact, it was largely believed that it was the backing of the Conservative Party that Liz Truss had, even over the economic competence that Rishi Sunak had, according to experts, which helped her win the prime ministerial election just about 45 days ago. She was prime minister for 45 days, the shortest in the history in Britain. And just this morning, there was the committee by Sir Graham Brady, who tried and organized this crisis meeting at number 10 following this announcement has come through. This obviously has come because Liz Truss was involved in a mini budget spoof, where of course she announced a whole lot of tax cuts which plunged UK's markets into further crisis, with Bank of England going haywire, with interest or mortgage interest shooting off the roof, the pound value dipping or plummeting to the lowest possible. And today, as we speak, just after the announcement that came through from Liz Truss's office, we hear that the pound now has slipped to $1.13 today. So given all of these circumstances, it is now for the Conservative Party to really sort of try and do a damage control like never before. And the damage is also like never before, given the series of scandals that their former Prime Minister Boris Johnson was involved in, the choice made by Conservatives, which is to choose Liz Truss. After 45 days, she steps down again, almost a deja vu moment like it was for the Conservative leadership when Boris Johnson was supposed to resign after very senior ministers in the Conservative cabinet resigned and expressed lack of confidence in their leader. Now we hear that in the next 1 week, there will be a leadership election, which probably indicates that it won't be a unanimous choice to have Rishi, but there will be another election. In the last few days, given all the controversy that was surrounding Liz Truss, several questions were asked by experts on whether Rishi Sunak is still interested in the job of the Prime Minister. And from reports we do hear, and from his office, we do hear that perhaps there is still the interest. So we don't know yet officially whether Rishi Sunak has thrown in his hat into the ring. We don't know whether he will be seen as a second choice, but we know that there will be a leadership election, and within a week, the Conservative Party is hoping to choose the Prime Minister, the next Prime Minister that they will have, which will be the third in this term, even at a time that the Labour leadership is already rolling out several spoofs and cartoons on just how, what a joke the Conservative cabinet has been and the government has been in the last few years.
Radhika, the Labour Party is already seeking elections, general elections, and we heard that not too long ago, I think just a couple of hours ago. Could things be headed that way then as well? What kind of pressure can the opposition exert right now?
Well, they have been doing their best because the Labour at the moment believes that there is full chance that they will come back to power if in the event of an election happening earlier than scheduled in 2024. In fact, there was an e-petition, a debate which was relating to the general election, which of course did take place. There is going to be another, and the first debate, which took place on the 17th of October at Westminster Hall, did demand and call for an early general election. That debate, of course, did not go very well for the Conservative Party because they were finding reasons on how they can fix their current government and how they can stay on in power until the schedule. But this, of course, is up. This is a democracy, as we know, and it is for the Dissolution and Calling of Parliament Act of 2022, which was also reinstated, and it is for them to take this decision on whether there will be a general election or an early general election. But this, of course, also indicates the kind of lack of faith that not just people have had in the Tories, but also how the Tories have lost faith in their Tory leadership, not once but twice over, with what happened with Boris Johnson. About 45 of the cabinet ministers dropped or resigned, and that led to Boris Johnson having to bite the bullet and resign because he was holding on to his chair. Similar fashion we saw with Liz Truss, where until about 24 hours or 40 hours ago, Liz Truss was saying that she's going to hold on to her position and lead the Conservative Party to the next election. But now there's been a U-turn after senior ministers in her cabinet, including the Chancellor and the Home Secretary, resigned.
All right, Radhika, stay on with us. Lord Meghnad Desai is also joining us live now. Sir, do you think this is a fit case, as the Labour Party says, for general elections to be held? Because the Conservative Party has given a lot of chaos, as they say, to the country already.
Well, you know, it would be a nice thing if there were a general election, but the Conservative Party does have a very large majority in the House of Commons. And as soon as they produce somebody, they would want to go on until 2024 before an election is due. You see, when there was a coalition government in 2010 onwards, there was an act passed about Fixed Term Parliaments Act. It was a Liberal Democratic desire to have regular elections, and so we are bound by law to have an election in 2024. And the previous idea which we had, that a prime minister could call election anytime, has been overruled by that particular piece of legislation. So in a sense, what the Liberal Democrat did was take power away from Parliament rather than give power to Parliament. So legally, I don't think it's possible unless the party sort of goes out and agrees with the opposition party to have an election now. Now, it's not in the interest of the Conservative Party to have election now because they have been disgraced. So they will go for the 2024 if they can manage it.
But clearly there is a lack of trust in their leadership now. One after the other, Boris Johnson goes because of the scandals around him. Liz Truss is not able to manage the situation. She herself has said, I cannot deliver the mandate for which I was elected, though I came into office at a time of great economic and international instability. Now, they are suggesting that the leadership election will be completed in the next week. Do you think that is an argument strong enough for them to continue in power?
Well, you see, the thing is, the procedure is that the person who is chosen by the parliamentary party is the leader. The Conservative Party extended to having a members' vote as well, again because of the Liberal Democratic suggestion. Now, a party in Parliament has every right to elect a new leader who will be Prime Minister. So in a sense, legally, they cannot really call election now because no Prime Minister has power to call election. That power has been taken away by the previous legislation called Fixed Term Parliament Act. So because of Fixed Term Parliament Act, to have an election before the due date, opposition has to move a bill or a proposal, and the government has to agree to it to be able to overcome Fixed Term Parliament Act, which is what happened when in 2019 Theresa May allowed the election to be called and Boris got in. So it would be the Conservative government's desire not to call an election right now, regardless of how much reputation they've lost. They would be hoping they would get somebody else, and that somebody else would restore some reputation so that while they will lose, they will not be wiped out. Right now, they are 30 points behind in the opinion polls. And that was yesterday, but by tomorrow they'll be 40 points behind. So it would suit them to avoid elections as far as possible.
Lord Meghnad Desai,
legally that is allowed.
Lord Meghnad Desai, in hindsight, do you think the Conservative Party now feels, a lot of them, perhaps that Rishi Sunak would have been a better choice, because he had said that the economic framework that Liz Truss had put before the people during the debates, for the leadership, Tory leadership, was a fairy tale, and that it was not sustainable.
Absolutely. I myself said that in a blog I wrote. The problem was that, in a sense, Rishi Sunak sounded more like a technical person who knew the answer to everything. And in politics, that doesn't work. In politics, you have to kind of get people's empathy, sympathy, and sort of pretend to be not completely knowledgeable. And I think what really has happened is that the most senior people were not competing for leadership at that time, and kind of a slightly junior team got in. So now I think what they will do, they will probably try. My hunch is that it will be Jeremy Hunt who will become the Prime Minister. Because he is senior enough. He tried twice before, and both times did not make the top grade. And this time, luckily, since last Friday, he has stabilized the nerves of the market and all that. So the party may just decide, cut the cackle, was basically just get Jeremy into job and then let him decide. Because he was supporting Rishi Sunak. I think people will go for Jeremy because he is more mature and has had many more cabinet positions than Rishi. I said even at that time that the contest had come too soon for Rishi Sunak in his career. He was not quite yet ready for a prime ministership. He could do it if he wanted to, but I don't think the party will risk another sort of technical, financial sort of person. And I think Jeremy Hunt would be the most likely person.
But Jeremy Hunt is also, as far as the Chancellor of the Exchequer is concerned, just taken over Lord Meghnad Desai. You're saying that it's brought some amount of stability in that sense, or at least sending out the right signals, because the pound was also crashing. But do you think he would be a better choice than Rishi Sunak? Why not Rishi Sunak?
Well, I keep on saying Rishi Sunak has been too recently in politics. To be prime minister, you have to have some more time. You have to have more politics. At least held one other cabinet position than just being chancellor. I mean, basically, as a Labour Party, we suffered that from Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown was only a chancellor when he became prime minister. He was not as successful as he could have been, as he was as a chancellor. So being a chancellor, a very good chancellor, which Gordon was not the same thing as being a prime minister. And so, there is a history to all this. And I think we kind of, other people know this history. And so I think Rishi's time will come. There's no need to be impatient. He's still only in the early 40s, and his time will come. But right now was not the time for him to run.
My final question to you, Lord Meghnad Desai, what is the sense that you get from the people in UK? Are they frustrated with this political chaos?
Everybody is not only frustrated, but very angry that, somebody said to me, who was a very distinguished man, who was Attorney General in the Labour government just about half an hour ago when I met him, he said, we seem to be like Zambia right now, which is very, very insulting to an African country. But he said, we are no longer looking like a developed country. We are looking like a third world, in a bankrupt place. I think it has made Britain very, very shaky, very badly run, and it's definitely a parliament and a government which is not in charge. And I think they will have to get somebody who's senior enough to be able to re-establish the reputation of Britain for having sound government. After all, it's a part of G7. And we have a war going on in Ukraine. Yes. And we can't just have anybody becoming prime minister. That has to stop. We got to get somebody senior, and I think Jeremy Hunt, because he has been around. He was the health minister. He was before that with another ministry. And so he has been around in politics. And as I said, twice he tried to become the leader. Twice he came number 2. So I think let him as number 2 gain above Rishi, who was number 2. So let's go ahead with him.
So you're rooting in some sense for Jeremy Hunt. At least you're saying he has
I'm not
possible.
rooting for him.
He has a shot at the PM-ship.
Sorry?
You are suggesting that he probably has a shot now at the Prime Ministership.
Yeah, I think if they want to save time, they will go for Jeremy Hunt and not get into a long-winded process of voting and all that. I think there is no time for that. The markets will absolutely, collapse tomorrow, and I think they'll have to reassure the market that they are in control. Somebody is in control.
Naturally. Many thanks, Lord Meghnad Desai, for joining us here on this discussion on this big news that is coming in from the UK, that Liz Truss has stepped down. The election for the leadership of the Conservative Party will take place over the next week. So the announcement should come in next week as to who the next Prime Minister is. Liz Truss will continue to be the caretaker Prime Minister for the next week. Taking a very quick break now. We'll be back with more. Stay with us. The big story coming in right now is UK Prime Minister Liz Truss stepping down after 45 days in office. She's just announced her resignation, suggesting that the leadership election will take place over the next week and she will continue to remain the caretaker Prime Minister till such time as a new Tory leader is elected by her party. Meanwhile, she said, I could not deliver the mandate for which I was elected, so I spoke to she went up to the king and decided that she is going to step down as the leader of the Conservative Party, after which this announcement was made outside the 10 Downing Street as well. This just comes a day after during a parliament session there in the UK, Liz Truss, when she was booed by some of the members of parliament, she said she is not a quitter. So from there, within 24 hours pretty much, there has been a 180-degree turn and she had to step down. This after pretty much the disaster of the mini budget that was to be presented. Now, it was seeing hiccups from the word go, because of which she in fact sacked the finance minister or the chancellor of the exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, as well. In fact, he was called from Washington, D.C. while he was at meetings related to the IMF, and his visit was cut short and he was asked to step down. At that time, questions were raised. Liz Truss was asked that how is it that the Chancellor of the Exchequer goes, but you stay in your position despite the fact that it was your brainchild, your idea, the whole mini budget, the cuts on some of the taxes for the rich that she had proposed on taking them back, and then there was a U-turn on that aspect as well. Why is it that only he goes? At which time she did not clearly respond to that answer, but pretty much made it clear that she's going to stay in office until yesterday, as we were pointing out. When she was being booed, she said she's not a quitter. However, within 24 hours, Liz Truss now has stepped down as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Let's quickly listen first to what she said yesterday and then the announcement of her resignation today.
We've helped people this winter and I will continue to do that. Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter. I have acted in the national interest to make sure that we have economic stability. At a time of great economic and international instability, families and businesses were worried about how to pay their bills. Putin's illegal war in Ukraine threatens the security of our whole continent, and our country has been held back for too long by low economic growth. I was elected by the Conservative Party with a mandate to change this. We delivered on energy bills and on cutting national insurance. And we set out a vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit. I recognise, though, Given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. This morning I met the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. We've agreed that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week. This will ensure that we remain on a path to deliver our fiscal plans and maintain our country's economic stability and national security. I will remain as Prime Minister until a successor has been chosen. Thank you.
Will stay in office until a successor is chosen. Let me bring in Radhika Iyer for more on that from London. Radhika, what is the timeline for the election of a successor? Because the process will be pretty much as we saw the last time around, but in a curtailed fashion.
Yes, pretty much what we saw last time around, which was not too long ago. It was only about 45 days ago. But last time around, we saw 3 different ballots that were carried out because there were a lot of candidates to be screened. This time around, it looks like because there is a short time and also there is pressure mounting from both the Labour Party as well as other opposition parties, including the Scottish National Party, which has now said that a general election is now a democratic imperative. Nicola Sturgeon, chief of SNP, has said the same. So it looks like we will have one round of a leadership contest. The one person who will be having an I told you so moment will be Rishi Sunak, who we hear from sources is a part of him is still interested in running for the job. We know that Jeremy Hunt, who is the next in command, if we could say so, just after Liz Truss, who now is the new Chancellor, has said that he is not interested to run for the race at number 10. So whether they will go back to the candidates that stood for the election last time around, which includes Rishi Sunak, or whether it will be a fresh list of interested candidates is up for the Conservative parties. But for the Conservative parties, they and the leadership, it's the toughest time that they have had in years. Given the mounting pressure, because Keir Starmer, who's the chief of the opposition at Labour Party, has already called for an immediate general election, given the bout of resignations at the top level, including the Prime Minister. Just 45 days ago, Liz Truss was elected, and she came in at a time when the UK has seen a series of scandals with the erstwhile Prime Minister Boris Johnson. So clearly, a big mountain of disgrace ahead for Conservative parties at the moment.
Radhika, constitutionally and legally, where does the opposition's demand for fresh general elections stand?
The Conservative Party should call for a general election should they feel that they cannot or they do not have the majority. But the Conservative Party does have the majority, and if they are able to choose a Prime Minister within a week, they will be able to continue within the legal remit or within the constitutional remit. It's more of a moral question now on whether the Conservative Party will admit that they have lost the faith and trust of not just their own MPs but also the people. But it is not a legal imperative for them because they still continue to have the majority, and so if they choose their next Prime Minister, as mentioned, within a week, they can very well continue.
All right, Radhika, stay on with us. Nicholas Nugent, senior journalist and former editor BBC, is now joining us on the phone line as well from London. Nick, you 2 weeks ago pretty much predicted that this was about to happen on a show on NDTV. You said that Liz Truss might not be Prime Minister till Diwali, and that's exactly what's happened. What next now?
Well, indeed, what next? We're all wondering that. But then it's been such chaos over the last 2 weeks especially that this is a bit of a relief. And indeed, even the markets are showing some positive reaction, and it's the markets that seem to be in charge. So now we are launched into a leadership election, and as your contributor Radhika said, there's still a possibility we might have a general election, but there isn't really machinery for doing that whilst the Conservative Party command a majority in the House of Commons. That's really how it works. So if the Conservative Party are as swift as they are saying they're going to be in finding a new leader within a week, and I think they will, they know the urgency, then we hope to get back to some sort of stability.
And who are those who could step in place of Liz Truss at the moment? Any names?
Yes. Well, the clear favourite, in my view, would be Rishi Sunak, because he, after all, was the favourite of Conservative MPs last time round, but defeated by the party at large when Liz Truss got the job. So you could say he is the chief runner-up from the last election. So he's definitely the favourite, but there are other candidates. There would be Penny Mordaunt, who was also in a candidate last time. Probably Suella Braverman, who resigned yesterday as Home Secretary, would be a candidate. One candidate ruled out, who ruled himself out, is Jeremy Hunt, who seems to be quite happy to have been appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer or Minister of Finance. So he has said already that he won't be a candidate next time round. And then there are one or two dark horses, like Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, who wasn't a candidate last time round, but he's popular. And there is that darkest horse of all, one Boris Johnson. But frankly, I don't think he is in with a chance, but we have to mention his name. So you've got about 5 or 6 candidates there, possible candidates, but we will know within a very short space of time who are the real candidates, who actually put their names into the ring.
Right. So, you know, if with this kind of list that you're suggesting of 5 probables, is a week enough?
Well, not if they go according to the normal rules, but everything so far has been against the normal rules. I mean, the normal rules protect Liz Truss for a year, but they've broken that rule, so they're going to change the rules as they go along. And I think what's going to happen is, firstly, the party at large in the country will not get a vote this time. After all, they mucked it last time, didn't they? So it'll be only within Conservative members of Parliament, and they will change the voting procedure. They will probably limit the number of candidates by saying that they have to have something like 75 members of Parliament supporting them. I mean, that's the way they can do it. They can engineer it to reduce the number of candidates, perhaps to 3, and ultimately to 2, and they can do that day by day. So yes, you know, the party are in charge, or the members of Parliament of the Conservative Party are in charge. They make the rules, this so-called 1922 committee that groups backbenchers, non-government members. They will make the rules, and they will make sure that it happens, because we all know that stability can only be restored if they move very fast. It's imperative now that they move very fast and that Liz Truss will be out before she's completed 50 days as Prime Minister. It's 44 days today, so that's how it'll go.
Yes, moving swiftly, perhaps on priority there. And that is why Liz Truss has, while announcing her resignation, also highlighted that the next leader will be chosen by next week. Many thanks, Nick, for joining us with your perspective there. We're taking a very quick break now. We'll be back with more on that big story as well as the others. Stay with us.